I never thought my father-in-law, Marty, would shatter my daughter's trust like that. But 2 years ago, after he lost his business, he moved in with us. Me, my husband Mark, and our daughter Emily. She was 11 then. Quiet, artsy, sensitive. Mark's calm, a high school math teacher who believes time heals everything. But even he couldn't deny the shift in the house. Marty started off fine, polite, easy to be around, but things changed fast. He had a way of playing favorites. His twin granddaughters, Julia and Hannah, were the golden children. At every family gathering, they'd get special gifts, long speeches about their achievements. Emily? She got a smile if she was lucky. I noticed it right away, but I didn't want to believe it would get worse. We'd been a family for years. I figured time would balance things out. It didn't. The more Marty spent time with his brother's kids, the less attention he gave Emily. They'd get fancy gifts, new gadgets, things Emily didn't even know to ask for. But for her, nothing. Not even a house school. He'd ask them about cheerleading, volleyball, the latest fashion trends, while Emily tried to show him her art, share her little wins. His response? Always lukewarm, at best. I brought it up to Mark more than once. This isn't right, I'd say. His answer was always the same. That's just how Dad is. Nothing changed. Even when I pointed out how Marty's claim of being broke didn't match up with the expensive gifts he gave the twins, Mark brushed it off. I felt like I was screaming into a void, so I started keeping notes. Just like Tanya suggested. Little things, big things, the patterns. And they were clear. Deliberate slights, small digs, dismissive comments. It wasn't petty, it was personal. I watched Emily try and try, bake him cookies, show him her sketchbook. She was reaching for something that wasn't there. I could see the disappointment building in her, like she was bracing for impact, hoping but knowing better. Then came the idea for the birthday party. All 3 girls' birthdays were within a few weeks, and Marty suggested combining them into one big party. Saves everyone time and money, he said. Mark agreed. I didn't love it, but I went along with it. I booked the hall, designed the invites, made sure each girl would get her moment. Emily was excited. She had been asking for art supplies and maybe a new phone. Something basic to replace the one that barely worked anymore. But behind the scenes, I heard Marty on the phone, whispering to Mark's brother. Yeah, I got them the good ones. They'll love 'em. He was talking about the twins, of course. Emily didn't even ask for anything that expensive. When she shared her wish list at dinner, Marty barely acknowledged it. But when the twins were mentioned, his face lit up like he'd just won a prize. Emily kept trying. I watched her, heart breaking a little more each time. She would go into the kitchen and bake cookies for Marty, trying to make something sweet for him. When that didn't get a reaction, she'd bring him her sketchbook, full of sketches and ideas she was proud of. He'd glance at it, maybe mumble a nice, and go back to his phone. Then she'd sit at the table, tracing lines in her notebook, trying to keep the hope alive. Meanwhile, the twins seemed to be everything to him. Every conversation was about them. He'd ask about their cheerleading routines, the swim meets, the new dance moves they'd mastered. Emily tried to join in on the conversation once, mentioning her latest art project. Marty gave her a quick look, a nod, and turned right back to the twins' updates. It was like Emily wasn't even there. I watched the hurt crawl across her face, like someone had poked a hole in her confidence, but she didn't say anything. I brought it up to Mark again, as gently as I could. You see what's happening, right? I asked. Marty's treating Emily like she's invisible. Mark didn't even look up from the TV. That's just how Dad is, he said, sounding almost tired. You know that. I didn't know it. I didn't want to know it. Do you think that's okay? I pressed. Because I don't. Mark sighed, rubbed the back of his neck, and gave me that same resigned look. I can't change him. You can't change him, he shrugged. We just have to let it go. Let it go. As if letting it go would fix anything. Things didn't get better. They got worse, actually. Marty kept telling us how tight money was, but every now and then, I'd catch glimpses of something that didn't match up. New shoes, flashy watches, strange boxes showing up on the porch. Luxury stuff. The kind of stuff he'd never have bought for Emily. The kind of stuff he'd never even ask her opinion on. I didn't say anything to Mark at first. I didn't want to rock the boat, but it wasn't just a few splurges here and there. It felt deliberate. The twins were getting everything, and Emily was getting nothing. I started keeping notes. Tanya had advised me to. Write it down, she said. Keep track of everything. Dates, words, the little things that seemed to build up into something much bigger. I wrote down the gifts Marty had given the twins, his comments about them, the way he dismissed Emily's accomplishments like they didn't matter. I jotted down the way he'd make an effort to talk to them and completely ignore her. It wasn't petty, it was a pattern. I was starting to see the damage. Emily was no longer trying as hard. She'd still hand him a card for his birthday, or show him something she'd drawn, but it was less frequent. It was like she already knew it was a waste of time, but she couldn't stop hoping that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. But it never was. I could see her disappointment growing. She wasn't mad, not exactly, just tired. Like she'd been waiting for something that wasn't coming, and now she was just waiting for the hurt to fade. But it didn't. One night, Emily asked me quietly after dinner, "Do you think Grandpa likes my drawings?" I could feel the weight of her question pressing on me. She was looking for something from me, something hopeful, something reassuring. But I didn't know how to give her that without lying. I shook my head. "I think he does, sweetie. Maybe he's just distracted. He's not always good at showing it." I didn't want to tell her the truth. The truth was, Marty didn't seem to care, not in the way that mattered. But I knew if I said that, Emily would collapse in on herself. She was already bracing for it. She smiled a little, but it didn't reach her eyes. And I couldn't help but feel like we were losing her, bit by bit, every time Marty chose his granddaughters over her. All 3 girls had birthdays within 3 weeks, so this year, Marty suggested we combine them into one big party. "Saves everyone time and money," he said, like it was the most practical idea in the world. Mark was on board immediately. "Makes sense," he agreed. "We're all busy anyway." I wasn't thrilled about it. I liked celebrating each girl's day individually, but I wasn't about to fight about it. I'd just been through too much, and Mark seemed to think this would smooth everything over, so I did what I always did. I went along with it. I booked the local rec hall, got the invitations printed, and made sure each girl would have her moment, even if I had a sinking feeling it wouldn't go the way it should. Emily was excited at least. She'd been asking for a new phone for months. Her old one barely worked anymore, and she was getting frustrated. On top of that, she'd been begging for a redecoration of her room, something she could call her own after all the chaos with Marty. I could see how badly she wanted it, but I wasn't sure if she truly believed it would happen. For her birthday wish, she asked for some art supplies and maybe a basic new phone. Nothing extravagant, just things that would make her feel seen. I could tell she was trying to keep it simple, trying not to ask for too much, but Marty wasn't listening. He didn't even look up when she shared her wish list over dinner. "That's nice," he muttered, then shoveled another bite of food in his mouth, like he couldn't care less. Emily's eyes dropped to her plate. She didn't say anything, but I could see the disappointment in her face. Then, as usual, Marty's attention shifted to the twins. "Julia's got a swim meet coming up," he said, grinning wide. "And Hannah's really starting to nail her back handspring. They're just so talented." He went on, the tone in his voice full of pride, while Emily sat quietly, picking at her food. It wasn't just the way he dismissed her wishes. It was the way he lit up when the twins were involved. Like their every move was worth celebrating, while Emily's efforts, the things she poured herself into, didn't even register. I heard Marty on the phone the next afternoon, whispering to Mark's brother. I only caught part of the conversation, but it was enough. "Yeah, I got them the good ones. They'll love 'em." The good ones. He was talking about the twins' phones, of course. Not a single word about Emily, not even a passing mention. And it made me angry. It made me sick. I glanced at Emily, who was sitting at the kitchen counter, sketching absent-mindedly. She didn't ask for much. I could see the effort she was putting into making the best of it. The way she kept trying to smile, even when she knew she wasn't getting the same kind of attention. But I couldn't help feeling that this party, this combined birthday, was going to be just another reminder that Marty had already chosen his favorites. I kept it to myself, though. I didn't want to spoil Emily's excitement, even if I could already see where this was heading. Marty wasn't asking what she wanted. He was already planning to shower the twins with presents. When I finally asked him about it, just casually, he shrugged. I'll figure out something for Emily. I just didn't have time to look yet. I didn't believe him. He didn't even try. The week before the party, Emily made Marty another card. It was hand-drawn, of course, full of little details she knew he liked. A fishing boat with his name on the side, a picture of his old dog, a sunset with bright orange and purple streaks. She worked on it for hours. "Do you think Grandpa will like it?" she asked me, looking up at me with hopeful eyes. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell her that this time, maybe, he'd notice. But I couldn't lie to her face, not anymore. "I'm sure he will, sweetie," I said, though I knew better by then. Marty hadn't changed. He was still the same, and nothing was going to make him appreciate her efforts. It didn't help that he was being more secretive than usual. I started noticing things, small, odd things. He'd take long phone calls in the garage, always whispering, like he was hiding something. He'd lock his bedroom door when he went in there, and if I asked him about it, he'd brush me off with some excuse about privacy or just doing paperwork. Then there were the sudden errands that never seemed to add up. I'd catch him rushing out, usually late at night, never giving a clear explanation of where he was going. The day before the party, I was in the kitchen when I heard the sound of plastic bags being dumped in the closet. When I went to check, Marty was standing in front of the door, blocking my view. "Just some surprises," he said, grinning like he was in on a joke I wasn't part of. I didn't ask. At that point, I was done with his half-hearted explanations. The way he was acting just didn't sit right. Whatever was in those bags, I knew it wasn't for Emily. At dinner that night, Emily mentioned, almost shyly, that she'd won an art contest at school. She looked at Marty, waiting for him to say something, anything, but he didn't even blink. "Good for you," he said, his voice flat. Then, just like that, he launched into a whole new story about Julia being scouted by a club volleyball team. It was like Emily wasn't even in the room. I watched her face fall. She smiled, of course, because that's what she did. Kept trying, even when the effort felt pointless. But I could see it in her eyes. She was done hoping he'd change. There was no magic moment coming, no sudden acknowledgement of her. When dinner ended, she went straight to her room without saying a word. I followed her, but she was already sitting on the edge of her bed, sketchbook open in front of her. She didn't look up when I walked in. "Are you okay?" I asked quietly, sitting down beside her. "Yeah," she said, her voice tight. "I'm fine," but she wasn't. I could see the hurt building up in her. The disappointment had turned into something else now, something heavier, like a weight she couldn't shake. And I didn't know how to make it better. The party was coming, and I could feel the tension in the house, thick as fog. I knew exactly what Marty was doing, and I knew exactly what it was doing to Emily. I just didn't know how much longer I could sit back and watch. The party started off fine. Emily was glowing, wearing her favorite dress, a deep green number that made her eyes stand out, the kind she never wanted to take off. She smiled, and for a little while, I let myself believe maybe things could be different today. The decorations were up, the games were a hit, and the 3-tier cake I'd ordered just for them was sitting proudly in the center, ready to be cut. Emily had friends there too. They laughed, ate cake, and celebrated like kids should. She was thankful for every gift, polite even when the presents weren't exactly what she wanted. Books, markers, some handcrafted jewelry from a friend. It wasn't flashy, but it was thoughtful. She smiled through it all, because that's who she was, trying to make the best of what she had, even when it wasn't enough. But when the presents slowed down, I felt that familiar tension creeping back. I knew Marty had something planned. He'd been acting too secretive for too long. "Time for something special," he said, standing up with a grin, his eyes bright with excitement. I wasn't sure who he was trying to impress. He handed 2 boxes to Julia and Hannah. They tore through the wrapping paper in seconds. I saw the gleam in their eyes as they opened the boxes, pulling out top-of-the-line smartphones. Everyone gasped. Even I wasn't prepared for it. The phones were brand new, the kind you see in commercials. They looked expensive, too expensive. Marty was grinning like a proud father. I watched Emily, who was sitting on the couch, trying to hide the sudden sharp inhale. Her smile wavered, then dropped. Her fingers gripped the edge of her chair, her knuckles turning white. "Did you get one for me too?" she asked softly, the words barely above a whisper. Her voice cracked just slightly, but I could hear it, the hope in it, the desperation. Marty didn't even look at her. He just shrugged, dismissive, like she wasn't even worth the effort of pretending. "I only bought gifts for my real granddaughters," he said, his tone flat. The room went dead silent. Every breath seemed to stop. I could see everyone in the room, frozen, unsure of what to do. Emily's face drained of color. Her eyes flickered, like she was trying to process what he'd said. But the words weren't making sense. "What do you mean?" she asked, barely above a whisper, like she was hoping she'd misunderstood. Marty just looked at her, unbothered. "You're not really part of the family, not by blood anyway." I could hear the tears in her voice, even though she wasn't crying yet. It was like a punch to the gut. Before anyone could react, before I could say anything, Emily stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor, and she rushed out of the room, her breath quick and shallow, her face crumpling like paper. I stood up to go after her, but I didn't need to be told. I could feel the weight of it, the sting of his words sinking in. I followed her, quick as I could. She was already at the door to the rec center bathroom when I caught up. The door slammed shut before I could reach it. I knocked once, softly. "Emily." "Nothing." "Sweetie, please," I said, pressing my hand to the door. "Let me in." The door cracked open, and there she was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest. Her face was twisted in agony, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said, like she was trying to convince herself. "I didn't ask for anything. I don't know why he hates me." I knelt down beside her, wrapping my arms around her, holding her tightly as her sobs shook her body. I felt her pain, deep in my chest. "I'm so sorry, baby," I whispered. "It's not you. It's him. You didn't do anything wrong." She shook her head, clinging to me. "But why? Why isn't he proud of me?" I didn't have an answer. Not a good one. All I could do was hold her as she cried, as she let out everything that had been building up for months, years. Every rejection, every small cut, every moment where Marty made her feel like she didn't belong. "I'm so sorry," I kept saying over and over, as if my words could somehow take the hurt away. But they couldn't. Not this time. And nothing could change what Marty had just done. I held Emily tightly in that bathroom, rocking her gently, as if I could somehow calm the storm inside her. Her words echoed in my mind. "Why doesn't Grandpa love me?" I didn't have an answer. Not a real one. I just kept holding her, whispering, "It's not you, sweetie. It's him. He's the one with the problem, not you." But I knew it wasn't that simple. It wasn't just about Marty's cruelty. It was about how deeply it had affected Emily, how it had eaten away at her confidence and her sense of worth. She didn't believe me, not fully, not yet. Eventually, she pulled away, wiping her eyes. "I'm okay," she said, though her voice was raw. I didn't push her to say more. She needed space, but I could feel it, the distance between her and Marty, growing wider with every word that had come out of his mouth. Back in the main room, I could hear Mark's voice rising, sharp and angry. "How dare you, Dad?" I walked out, catching the last of Marty's smug expression. He didn't even seem bothered, standing there like he hadn't just destroyed everything. "I'm just stating facts," Marty said, his tone cool, like this was all just a disagreement over dinner. "She's not blood. Never will be." Mark was livid. "She's our daughter, Dad." His voice cracked with the weight of everything I'd been feeling. "She's part of this family I couldn't watch anymore." I turned to Emily, who was standing by the door, still so quiet, and took her hand. It was time to go. The drive home was silent. Emily didn't say a word, just stared out the window, her face pale and distant. It hurt me more than anything, the way she shut down. I wanted to reach out, to pull her back from whatever dark place she was retreating to, but I knew better than to force it. She'd talk when she was ready, but when we got home, things between Mark and me started to unravel. "Are you really okay with this?" I asked, my voice low, but there was a steel edge to it. "How are you not furious?" Mark dropped his keys on the counter, a tired sigh leaving his lips. "It's my dad, Haley. What do you want me to do? He's always been like this." "He's destroying our daughter," I shot back, my patience running thin. "He's telling her she doesn't belong here, that she's not part of the family. He's breaking her, Mark." He rubbed his face like he was exhausted, like this was just another fight to add to the list. I know he's messed up, but he's my dad. And we're supposed to just keep letting him walk all over us? Keep letting him walk all over Emily? That's what you want?" Mark didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at me like he was considering what I'd said. But I didn't give him the time to let it slide. "It's time to pick a side, Mark," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "You either choose us, your family, or you choose him. But we can't keep doing this. Not like this." I watched him for a long moment. His face was unreadable, and I felt the knot in my stomach tighten, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. I knew how much he wanted to believe his dad could change, that Marty could be the person he used to be, but I wasn't willing to let it destroy Emily anymore. She was my priority. She had to be. Mark's shoulders slumped. "I don't know what to do," he admitted, his voice low. "I do," I said, my voice firm. "We protect her, we stand up for her, and we don't let him do this again." The silence between us felt like it could stretch on forever, but I wasn't backing down. Emily's heart was on the line, and this time, I wasn't going to let anyone tear it apart. The next morning, I was cleaning up the kitchen when I found it. The receipt was tucked under a pile of papers on the counter, an ordinary spot for something Marty probably meant to throw out. But I picked it up without thinking, and as soon as I saw the total, my stomach dropped. Over $2,400. For 2 smartphones, the twins' smartphones. I felt a surge of heat rush through me, a mix of anger and disbelief. It had been weeks since Marty had said money was tight, that he couldn't afford to buy anything extravagant. But here it was, all laid out in front of me, a lie. I shoved the receipt in my pocket, my hands shaking as I thought about everything else. The luxury gifts, the secretive phone calls, the online orders. It was all a pattern, and Marty had been hiding it right under our noses. He had lied about being broke. He had lied about everything. And in the process, he had been crushing Emily, making her feel like she didn't matter. That afternoon, the school called. I felt my heart sink when I saw the number on the screen. It was the principal's office. "Mrs. Nichols." The secretary's voice was gentle, like she was trying to soften what she had to say. "We're concerned about Emily. She's been withdrawing lately, skipping assignments, not engaging in class. We just wanted to make sure everything's okay." "Everything's fine," I said, trying to steady my voice. "Thank you for letting me know. I'll talk to her." But I already knew. Emily had been quieter, more distant. She had stopped drawing in her sketchbook as much, stopped talking about her day. She was shutting down, retreating into herself. I could see it. The weight of the disappointment was pulling her under, and Marty's actions were the anchor that was dragging her deeper. That night, I waited for Mark to come home, my nerves winding tighter as the hours passed. When he finally walked in, I didn't wait. I handed him the receipt without saying a word. He looked at it, then back at me, and I could see the confusion in his eyes. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "I found it on the counter," I said. "The phones, the ones Marty bought for the twins. Over $2,400. He's been lying about being broke." Mark ran a hand through his hair. I don't know what to say. He said he was saving up, that things were tight. "He's lying, Mark," I said, my voice tight. "He's been lying about all of it. And look at what it's doing to Emily. Look at how it's affecting her. She's pulling back. She's shutting down. She doesn't feel like she belongs here anymore." Mark's face faltered. The truth was hitting him now, harder than it had before. "I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't want to see it." I nodded, my throat tight. "I know, I didn't either, but we can't keep letting him do this. We can't just keep pretending that it's okay." He stood there for a long moment, staring at the receipt, his expression unreadable. Finally he spoke, his voice low and steady. "So, what do we do now?" "We have to ask him to leave," I said. "This can't keep going. It's hurting Emily. It's tearing our family apart." Mark looked up at me then, his eyes meeting mine with something like clarity. "You're right. It's time." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, but it was replaced with something heavier, the knowledge that we were about to take a stand that would change everything. But I wasn't backing down. I couldn't. "We'll confront him tomorrow," I said, my voice firm. "We do this together." Mark nodded. "Together." He sighed, and I could see the relief in his eyes. "We'll do it. For Emily." I didn't want to waste any more time. Tomorrow was the day. Marty was going to know the truth. And so was Emily. We weren't going to let him destroy our family any longer. The next morning, Marty acted like nothing had happened. He was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee, flipping through the newspaper like he hadn't just crushed our daughter's heart the night before. The nerve of him. It was like his words didn't even matter. Like nothing mattered except his own comfort. I walked into the kitchen, my stomach tight, the weight of everything I'd been holding and pressing down on me. Mark was still getting ready for work, so I knew it was up to me to finally do what needed to be done. I stood in front of Marty, arms crossed, staring him down. "It's time you moved out," I said, my voice flat but firm. I wasn't asking anymore. I wasn't waiting for some kind of epiphany from him. It was over. He laughed, a dry, dismissive sound. "You don't have the authority to tell me that." I didn't flinch. "I don't need authority. I'm the one who has to live with you, and Emily's the one who has to deal with the fallout of your bullshit." His grin faded a little, but not much. Marty wasn't used to being called out, especially not by me. "I'm just stating facts," he said, leaning back in his chair, clearly not understanding how badly he'd fucked up. Mark walked in then, his eyes scanning the scene, already knowing what was happening. His jaw was tight. I could see the tension in his shoulders. He had his own fight brewing inside him, but he was standing with me. We were in this together. "Actually, we both agree," Mark said, his voice calm, but the anger underneath was clear. "You're hurting Emily. You need to go." Marty's eyes widened, but he didn't get up, didn't make any move to leave. Instead, he reached for his phone. "I'm calling my brother," he muttered, punching in the number without hesitation. Within an hour, Mark's brother and his wife showed up, storming through the door like they were ready to mediate. They had no idea what they were walking into. Marty had already pulled them into his mess, trying to make it seem like I was the unreasonable one. They must have thought they were coming to defend him, to smooth things over. "Come on, Mark," his brother said, clapping a hand on his shoulder, trying to sound calm. "Let's talk this out, yeah? This isn't the way to handle things." I didn't give them the time of day. I stood in the kitchen, my arms crossed, waiting for Mark to take control. I could see the doubt flickering in his eyes, but I knew he was done now. He had to be. "I've seen it too," Mark's sister-in-law added, voice quiet but firm. "The favoritism, the little jabs, the way he dismisses Emily. It's not right." Marty's expression didn't change. He looked at her like she'd just given him a mild critique, like it was no big deal. "She's not my blood," he said again, his tone like he was repeating some tired mantra. That was it. That was the breaking point. His cold indifference to everything we'd been through, to Emily's pain. It was the final nail in the coffin. Mark took a deep breath and stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension. "Then you'll be finding somewhere else to stay," Mark said, his voice low but unwavering. "That's final." Marty's face twisted into something I couldn't quite read. Anger, frustration, maybe a little bit of fear, but mostly just disbelief. He wasn't used to being called out like this. He wasn't used to being told no. "You can't just kick me out," he said, his voice rising slightly. "I can," Mark said, taking a step closer, his jaw set. "And I will." The room fell silent. Even Marty's brother and sister-in-law were standing there, unsure of how to react. They didn't know where to place themselves in this, whether to back Marty up or see that Mark was finally doing what should have been done a long time ago. "I've been nothing but kind to you," Marty muttered, standing up now, pushing his chair back. "I don't deserve this, after everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done for us," I snapped. "You've done nothing but make things harder. You've torn our family apart, and it stops now." Marty shook his head, disbelief still written all over his face. But Mark wasn't backing down. "You're hurting Emily. That's enough. It's time for you to go." There was a long, tense pause before Marty spoke again, and I could see in his eyes that he was processing what was happening, trying to figure out how to fight back. "This isn't over," he said finally, his voice low, cold. "We'll see about that," Mark replied. I stood beside Mark, feeling the weight of the decision, but knowing it was the only way forward. It was done. Marty was leaving, and Emily would finally have the chance to heal. Marty moved in with Mark's brother that weekend, just like we'd planned. I didn't want to make it a big thing, didn't want to draw it out. Emily didn't say goodbye. She just stayed in her room, doing her thing, like she didn't need to acknowledge him leaving. He didn't try to hug her, didn't make any kind of effort to fix things. It was like the air in the house cleared the moment he stepped out the door, and for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. The house felt lighter, peaceful even. We didn't have to walk around on eggshells anymore. It was quiet in a way that made sense. I didn't realize how tense everything had been until it was gone. Emily started to relax, little by little, like the weight she'd been carrying was finally being lifted. The first thing we did was repaint her room. She'd been talking about it for months, how she wanted a space that was hers, something to call her own after everything that had happened. She picked a bold teal, the kind of color that felt alive and full of energy. It wasn't a safe color, it wasn't pastel. It was vibrant, just like her. We spent the whole weekend on it. I let her take the lead, letting her choose the accents and the designs for the walls. She picked out the curtains, the bedspread, even rearranged the furniture. And as we painted, I saw it. Her light was starting to come back. The girl who had been so quiet, so withdrawn, was starting to show up again. She hummed along to the music, laughed when she got paint on her hands, and even joked about how much of a mess we were making. It felt good. Family therapy helped too. Emily didn't want to go at first, but she agreed because I promised it would be just us. No Marty, no pressure. Slowly, she started to open up. She shared more about how she'd felt all this time, how hurt she'd been, but also how much she wanted to move forward. She didn't cry much in those sessions. Instead, she spoke about the things she loved, her art, her friends, how much she wanted to do better in school. It was like she was finding herself again, piece by piece. As the weeks went on, she started laughing more. The sparkle that had been missing from her eyes was slowly returning. She invited her friends over again, something she hadn't done in a long time. They spent hours in her new room, drawing, talking, and being loud in a way I hadn't heard in months. Even the twins came by once. They came to apologize. Julia and Hannah stood at the door, looking awkward, their parents hovering behind them like they didn't know what to say. Julia spoke first. "We're sorry," she said quietly, her eyes darting between me and Emily. "We didn't know what was going on. Our parents are trying to do better too." I nodded, accepting it. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was something. Emily didn't say much at first, just looked at them for a long moment. But then she smiled, a small, cautious smile, and said, "It's okay. It's not your fault." They stayed for a little while, playing video games and eating snacks, but Emily didn't hang on to them the way she used to. She wasn't clinging to their approval anymore. It was like she was slowly realizing that she didn't need to prove herself to anyone. The change in her was gradual, but it was real. The girl who'd been so quiet, so withdrawn, was becoming someone new, someone stronger, and it was like everything shifted. We were finally a family again, without the strain of Marty's presence hanging over us. And Emily? She was becoming herself again. The light in her eyes was back. She was drawing again, filling pages with the kind of art that made me want to stare at it for hours. She was laughing, inviting friends over, and even talking about the future again. It wasn't a perfect recovery. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But it was happening. We were healing. Together. A few months later, Emily's art was chosen for a city exhibit. It was one of those moments where you could feel the weight of everything she'd been through, all of it finally coming to a head in a way that felt right. She'd painted a girl standing alone under storm clouds, her hand stretched out toward the light. The title was "Unchosen Doesn't Mean Unloved." I stared at it for a long time when we saw it on the gallery wall, overwhelmed by the rawness of it. Emily had poured herself into that painting. I could see it, the uncertainty, the pain, the hope. It was all there in the strokes of color. Mark and I stood beside her, proud, even as we both tried not to get too emotional. She looked so much more grounded than she had before. She was standing tall, as if this was her moment to finally take up space. Marty wasn't there, and for the first time, that felt okay. The emptiness of his absence didn't sting. It just was. He hadn't tried to reach out since he'd left. There were no cards, no phone calls, no "I'm proud of you" moments. And for Emily, that was a relief. She didn't need him there. She didn't need his approval. On the drive home, after the exhibit, It was just the three of us in the car. Emily was quiet for a few moments, her fingers tracing the edge of her seat. Then she turned to us, her voice steady. "I know who I am," she said, looking out the window as if the words had been building up for a long time. "And I know who sees me." Mark and I exchanged a glance, and in that moment I could see it, the shift. She had found herself, and we were right there with her, cheering her on, proud of her strength. "We see you, baby," I said, my voice thick. "And we always will." Mark nodded. "No one will ever make you feel less than again." She smiled. But it wasn't just a smile. It was a quiet assurance, like the weight of years of doubt had been lifted off her shoulders. We didn't need Marty to see her. We saw her. We always had. It wasn't a perfect ending, not by any means. There was still work to do. Healing wasn't a straight line, but it was the beginning of something better. Just us, safe, honest, and free. And that, in the end, was enough.